Hello everyone, Old Man Cam here, back with another quick and dirty review of a game that I played in 2019. Today, the game that I would like to cover is Divinity Original Sin 2. Divinity Original Sin 2 is an isometric old school RPG in the way of Baldur's Gate. Basically think like Dungeons and Dragons, except for the Dungeon Master already has their campaign written out as a novelization, and there's not a deviation from it, but there's a lot to do. Divinity Original Sin 2 is basically the big boy version, the grown-up version of the games For the King that I reviewed a week or two ago, I think. And it is the game that I played with my wife, that my wife and I graduated to after we finished For the King. I know my wife loved it because we played it for a few hours a day, nearly every day for upwards of, I would say, almost a month. And she generally does not stick with games for that long. Basically, you can pretty much do anything within the game's parameters, and the game's parameters are very, very wide. Sorry I keep getting distracted over here, but I have a cat that likes playing with my cords and my shoestrings. Love you, Bubsies. Basically, you can pretty much do anything and go anywhere within the game's parameters. There are stages, there are things that you have to do to progress the storyline and everything. But the way that you go about it is entirely up to you. If you want to go in guns blazing, you can try that. If you want to be stealthy and sneak around, you can do that. If you want to... I would say if you want to go where the game directed you, you could do that, but really, the direction is all up to you. You have to talk to people. You have to find out where to go. It is up to you to determine how to progress the game from there. There are optional side quests that you can partake in order to get items that will make your game easier. Some of them, are just like general side quests in an RPG, where they dole out just better items and weapons for you to use or more things to sell. But I mean, really, it's like Dungeons and Dragons. If it's not bolted down and you're not over encumbered, you can pick it up. The battles themselves are, again, like Dungeons and Dragons. Very spacing based, very turn based, but there's limited actions that you can take, and gameplay really comes down to making the most of those turns and those actions. Things like being able to haste your characters can give you a huge advantage if you can get a lot of your team hasted. Getting your tanks out front, getting your wizards and squishy characters in the back makes a big difference here. It plays like you would expect a Dungeons and Dragons type game to play. The way that it breaks off into multiplayer, I think, is pretty good too. For the most part, I don't mention the multiplayer in my reviews because it's not something I usually play, but this is a game that I primarily played in multiplayer with my wife. And just the way that it split screens is nice. That's nice enough. But the way that someone can be get into a fight, they can say the wrong thing, they can walk into the wrong area, get into a fight, and the other person can still roam around just like normal. Now, if they stumble into the area of the fight, of course, they get sucked into the fight and they participate just like normal. The one nagging issue that we had throughout the entirety of playing this game is that there was a glitch that sometimes after battles, the game would not go back to split screen. It would just absolutely refuse to go back to split screen without you having to go back into the menu and toggle split screen back on, which I think is a little weird, especially considering the split screen multiplayer aspect was the reason why we opted to get the Xbox version in the first place. We played it on Xbox, by the way. But with all that being said, it is a game that I may pick up 2 copies of for my wife and I to play on the Switch. I have a Switch, she has a Switch Lite. And I may pick up the game again because we did enjoy it a lot. We just hated that one aspect. And I think we could have fun with it again. We got very attached to our characters. We got very attached to our builds. But it was cool seeing her enjoy being able to do all this stuff, being able to pretty much do anything, go anywhere within the limitations of the game. But literally, if it's not bolted down, we were stealing everything. We were little kleptos, man. It's a game that I recommend if you are If you graduated from For the King and you're looking for something else to play that is similar to Dungeons and Dragons and you don't have the friends around to play, or if you want to see what Dungeons and Dragons is like without having to look for people to play with, I think Divinity Original Sin is a game that would do you well. It gives you pretty much what you would expect in a game like in a D&D setting. I give Divinity Original Sin an A, and I will see you tomorrow.